In the days when Saul was king over Israel, there was a young man named David, a shepherd, a warrior, a musician, and a man after God's own heart. His name was quickly rising in fame across the land after his bold victory over the giant Goliath. But as his reputation grew, so did the jealousy of King Saul. Yet even in the midst of tension and turmoil in the palace, a young woman watched David with admiration, Michal, the daughter of King Saul. She wasn't just a princess, she was a woman with a heart that saw beyond power and politics. She loved David for who he truly was, and when Saul noticed this, he saw an opportunity to use her affection as a trap. Saul offered Michal to David in marriage, not as a gesture of goodwill, but as a way to ensnare him. The price for her hand was not gold or silver, but a dangerous and bloody mission, to bring back proof of his victories against the Philistines. Saul hoped David would die in the process. But David, full of courage and confidence in God, succeeded and returned victorious. And so David and Michal were married. She became his first wife, and for a time they were together. Though the palace was a place of danger and political tension, Michal loved David deeply, enough to defy her own father. One night, Saul's rage boiled over, and he sent men to kill David. Michal, realizing the danger, warned David and helped him escape through a window. She even created a decoy in his bed to delay the guards. Her love for David led her to betray her father's wishes and risk her own life. But after David fled, everything changed. Saul, humiliated and furious, took Michal and gave her in marriage to another man named Palti. She was torn away from David, not by her choice, but by her father's will. Years passed. David lived in hiding, becoming a leader of men, growing in strength and favor with God. Eventually, after many battles and long seasons of struggle, David rose to become king. When David began to consolidate his rule, he demanded that Michal be returned to him. She was, after all, his wife, the one who had once saved his life. Saul was now dead, and David wanted what was rightfully his. But time changes people. The years apart had left scars, and the reunion between David and Michal was not the romantic scene one might expect. Though she returned to him, something had shifted. Their love was no longer untouched by pain, betrayal, and pride. One day, as David brought the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem with great celebration, he danced with all his might before the Lord, wearing only a linen ephod. The people rejoiced, but Michal watched from a window, and her heart was filled with contempt. When David returned home to bless his household, Michal confronted him. She accused him of acting shamefully before the people. But David responded boldly, saying he danced before the Lord, who had chosen him over her father. He would become even more undignified if it meant honoring God. That moment became a turning point. The Bible tells us that Michal remained childless for the rest of her life. Whether it was by divine consequence or the natural outcome of broken love, their relationship never recovered. The story of David and Michal is not the fairy tale we hope for. It is a love story marked by loyalty, loss, politics, pride, and pain. It reminds us that love, even when passionate and brave, can be fragile in the face of power and resentment. Michal loved David, enough to save his life, enough to risk everything. But wounds festered in silence. Pride and bitterness grew where intimacy once lived. And David, though a man of deep worship, was not always a man of emotional closeness. Yet their story remains important. It teaches us that love must be protected not only from outside enemies, but from the slow erosion of the heart. That what begins in loyalty must be nurtured in humility and grace. It also reveals that even those chosen by God, like David, are still human. They stumble, they fail. They leave behind trails of brokenness even as they rise in victory. And Michal, the princess who loved a shepherd, remains one of the Bible's most complex and tragic figures. Her story reminds us that love without surrender, without forgiveness, and without shared purpose can fade. even when it starts with fire. So what can we learn from David and Michal? That true love is not just about passion or sacrifice. It is about choosing to grow together even in the hardest seasons. It is about speaking life instead of resentment. And above all, it is about honoring God in how we treat the hearts of those we once promised to cherish. May we not only seek love that begins with emotion, but one that endures with faith, humility, and grace. If this story touched your heart, subscribe now to Divine Love Stories for more unforgettable love stories from the Bible, stories of passion, redemption, failure, and God's unending mercy. Like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of what true love really means, because the greatest love stories ever told are written by God.